The Angels are really trying to make a playoff push for the first time in the Shohei Ohtani era, trying to capitalize on his potential last year in Los Angeles as they just made another trade, this time with the Colorado Rockies, to go and get CJ Cron and Randal Grichuk, both who were originally drafted by those same Los Angeles Angels. Grichuk, ironically, was the pick right before Mike Trout because the Angels had both of them. So two former Angels, although Grichuk never played in LA during his time in the majors, are going back to Los Angeles to go ahead and try and give the Los Angeles Angels one final push towards a playoff in what could be Shohei Ohtani's last year playing for the Halos. Both guys will be free agents at the end of the year. Cron is currently making $7.25 million. Grichuk is $9.33 million, so they will be free agents. The Angels aren't guaranteed to have these guys past this year, and that kind of fits with their timeline if they don't expect Shohei to be back. Cron's having somewhat of a down year after being an all-star in 2022. Slash line's currently 259, 300, 473. The OPS under 800 isn't doing great. WRC plus is around 91 right now, so he's below league average. And it's not like his BABIP is extremely low. It's pretty close to league average, a little bit below, but at the same time, he's really just not having the best year, especially compared to what he did in 2022, where he really excited people. But regardless, the Angels have a need at first base. He will fill that immediately, and he will be immediately helpful for a team that's been absolutely ravaged by injuries on the infield. So expect Cron to slide into first base full-time for the Angels, and they're going to have to do some roster manipulation because they do have some solid players who are going to have to get set down. But at the end of the day, they're building up their depth for what should be a hopeful playoff push for the Los Angeles Angels, and CJ Cron is a great way to strengthen that infield depth that they really need because of injuries. Randal Grichuk is the other piece in this trade, and as most people know, Mike Trout is hurt right now, so Grichuk will immediately slide into center field and be a really good piece there. Joe Adell is also hurt, so they really did need to have a center fielder come in and step up. They started Trey Cabbage, who's normally a first baseman at center field, a couple days ago, so this was definitely a need they needed to fill in the short term to go ahead and have a playoff push. No offense to Trey Cabbage, I really like him as a prospect. I really like him as a potential good player going forward, but at the end of the day, he's not a center fielder for your team, and getting Randal Grichuk is going to be a big help there. He's having, for his standards, a career year. He's slashing 312, 367, 520, so his OPS is above 800. He's got a 119 WRC plus, a 121 OPS plus, so he really is having a very good year for his standards. It's not all-star level, it's not game-breaking, but at the end of the day, he's going to be someone who is going to help the Angels proceed and hopefully make the playoffs. I think a lot of people are rooting to see the Angels make it simply because people want to see more Shohei Ohtani. I mean, who doesn't? I love Shohei. Everyone loves Shohei. He's a great figure for the game, and to see him in the playoffs is going to be huge. It might happen next year if he decides to leave Los Angeles and go to a different team, but right now I think the Angels realize this is their last shot to really make a big push while they have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, and getting CJ Cron and Randal Grichuk is going to be huge for their ability to go ahead and do that. The first player heading back to Colorado in this deal is Jake Madden, a 21-year-old right-hander who's currently pitching in Single A. He was a 2022 fourth-round pick, but he signed for $1 million out of Northwest Florida State Community College. He went there because he had Tommy John surgery his senior year of high school, and he decided to forgo his commitment to the University of South Carolina to go to community college because you can be eligible to be drafted after just 1 year if you attend community college versus the traditional 3 years, sometimes 2 based on your birthday. You would need to get drafted if you went to a traditional 4-year college like the University of South Carolina. He was committed to Alabama after that year, but the Angels ended up signing him away for that big $1 million bonus, and that was a very easy decision for him to go ahead and turn professional. He doesn't have a long track record of pitching. Again, he was hurt his senior year, community college pitching, so he doesn't have a big extensive history of pitching, but he has a lot to work with. People love his build and his huge projectable frame. He's a Herculean 6'6", but according to his weight ratings, he's only 185 pounds, which is really light, and he has a lot of room to go ahead and bulk up and add muscle to his frame, which is only going to go ahead and increase his velocity and make him a more projectable player. He's lanky, he has a very, very long arms, and that really helps his release point going down farther towards the plate, less time for you to see the ball when it's still in the pitcher's hand. His fastball has the making of being a plus pitch. It has a lot of deception, and because of that late release point, it does tend to run up on hitters, and they don't realize it's there until it's already past them. However, when they do get a hold of it, they tend to make pretty solid contact. His fastball is going to induce contact, and he's a ground ball pitcher, which is important because in Coors Field, the more fly balls you produce, the more likely you are to give up a home run because it's high altitude. With that being said, if he adds on some more weight and strength and can increase his velocity a little bit, right now his max is about 98 miles an hour. If he can go and hit that consistently during a start, he's going to be fine, and that fastball is going to be a plus pitch that he's not going to have to worry about going ahead and making a ton of contact, because he's going to get swings and misses, and the contact he does get isn't going to be enough to go ahead and hit a ton of home runs. Unfortunately, Madden does have some control issues. It's something he really needs to work on, especially with his off-speed stuff. There hasn't been any noticeable improvement to his changeup, and some scouts even think it might have regressed a little bit simply due to lack of use and more time focusing on other pitches. And his slider is probably his least refined pitch right now. It doesn't have a ton of movement, but there's a lot of potential for him to go ahead and make that a solid pitch in the future. Again, if he can add bulk and muscle and really start to fill out his frame, things are going to come naturally, and that's really the excitement about Jake Madden. He has the mix of pitches to go ahead and be an effective starter, and when you look at someone of his frame, and if he can really fill out, which I've said a couple times already, but that's just to emphasize the importance of him going ahead and putting on weight and adding muscle and adding strength, he's going to be a very good starting pitcher. He might cap out as a number 2 if he's really lucky. I think that's the highest ceiling he'll have. I think a more realistic goal would be a mid-level 3 or your 4th starter. I think that's a fair landing point. He's going to be a slow riser through the minor league system, which doesn't fit what the Angels do at all. If you know anything about the Angels, they skyrocket people up. Think of Zach Neto, think of Ben Joyce, who were drafted in 2022 and are already up, and think of someone like Noah Shanuel, their first round pick this year, who's already playing in AA, even though it's been less than a month since he got drafted. That's just who the Angels are, and Jake Madden doing a slow burn approach is not really what the Angels' MO is. So send him off to the Rockies and go with players who are going to be fast risers, just like what your kind of MO is, and that's what the Angels ended up doing. He hasn't been stellar in single A this year. He has a 5.46 ERA, a 5.72 FIP, and a 159 WHIP, so he's really not tearing it up if you look at the base numbers, and that just has to do with who he is. He hasn't fully developed into what the pitcher he's projected to be. Again, he needs to fill out, and with that, it's going to add more velocity. He's going to refine his pitches a little bit more, and at that point, he has the potential to be a high leverage guy. His control really is not there either, as I mentioned before. So once he goes ahead and gets that under control, he will be a much better pitcher. Right now, this year, he has 5.5 walks per 9, which is absolutely atrocious. That's walking a hitter every 2 innings. That is the furthest thing from sustainable, and he has a pitch mix to potentially be a decent reliever, but he's not going to be a back-end guy that you're going to want closing out games for you. But he will be someone who, if he really does end up being a bullpen piece, he will be someone who will be able to pitch in some medium leverage roles, maybe 6th inning to relieve a starter in a close game. That's where he'll end up being at the very, very least. I think his ceiling is higher than that. I think he'll end up higher than that, but that's probably where his floor is. He's what I call a low high variance guy in the fact that his variance is pretty high. He'll either be a potential good number 2 starter for you, or he could be a middling bullpen piece. That's a lot of variance, but it's not someone who could be a superstar or is going to phase out by the time they hit AA. So there is a high amount of variance in what outcomes he could have, but it's not a drastic, this guy is either going to wow you or he's going to crap the bed and you're never going to hear his name after a couple years. So there's a variety of outcomes, but it's not super pronounced. But I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't stick a starter, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's also a decent starter who you like when you see his name read on the lineup card. It's all a matter of how he develops, and if Colorado can really go ahead, again, bulk him up and refine some of his pitches. The second name going back is Mason Albright, who was a 2021 12th round pick of the Angels. You might remember that in the 2021 MLB draft, the Angels took all college pitchers except for one player, and that was Mason Albright, who was a lefty out of IMG Academy, which for all intents and purposes, it's the closest you can get to a college without being in high school. For you college football fans, you probably know that IMG Academy is the one that Bishop Sycamore played when they got canceled, the fake high school, but it's also a elite training academy where you go to high school, but the teachers, the staff, the faculty are all ex-athletes, and it's designed to get you to the next level athletically while producing a quality education. So he was trained and taught with some of the best baseball players beforehand, so he's basically a quote-unquote college pitcher, or he had some of that training before he got even to the Angels system. So for all intents and purposes, the Angels basically got a ton of college pitchers in the 2021 draft. Even though he was a 12th round pick, the Angels went below slot for a lot of their pitchers in the top 10 rounds where you get your bonus pool from, and it was able to sign him away from his college commitment for $1.25 million. In 2022, Albright was hit around pretty hard in single A. He had a 1.98 whip, an ERA of 9. It just was a really, really bad showing during his time in single A last year. But the Angels were able to look at him and say, wow, your arm action is really, really long, and that's impacting your ability to make pitches. So during the offseason this year, they shortened that arm action, and it has paid off hugely for Albright. So far in 2023, he has a 3.67 ERA, a 1.23 whip, and his walks per 9 has fallen from a 4.31 walks per 9 to 2.26, so almost in half. Those are a huge change in numbers, and it just goes to show you how much a little change can go a very, very long way in making or breaking a player. His frame is not as projectable as Jake Madden. As a matter of fact, it's really not that close. He's 6 foot 190, so he doesn't have as much space as Madden does to really bulk up, which is a little concerning given that his maximum fastball velocity is 94. He normally sits around 91 to 92 miles an hour, so he's not going to be able to go ahead and increase that velocity from bulking up and gaining muscle and gaining velocity that way. So he is going to not have a power fastball, and if he does want to increase his miles per hour, he's going to have to find other ways besides adding strength, which is fine. That's just the nature of the beast. There's tons of pitchers who are shorter, like Tim Lincecum, who's even shorter than Mason Albright is, who are able to dominate in the major leagues. He's only 20, so there's a lot of time to grow. He's also in single A right now, so he has a couple more steps to go to really refine his craft and take up against stronger competition and figure out exactly where he stands. In terms of his pitch mix, his fastball, curveball, and changeup all grade out to be about average. His changeup has the potential to regress a little bit or potentially be dropped, especially if he ends up having to go to the bullpen, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But his curveball has the potential to go ahead and be a plus pitch. It can get a little bit slurvy and easier for batters to hit at times, but it really can be a plus curveball if he can go ahead and control it, which is something that you'll hear a lot about pitchers. If they can control their pitches, they're going to have a lot of success, and Albright really needs to go ahead and control that changeup in order for it to be a plus pitch and something he can really rely on in the long term. His fastball is all about feel and not stuff, which is really good, especially for a young pitcher. It's not that it just plays well against lower competition, but Albright has a really, really good feel for it. That allows him to use it in situations that other pitchers who just feel well and can't locate well. So if he can start to develop that same feel for the changeup as he did for the fastball, he's going to have no issue at all adjusting very well to the major leagues. He also has a lot of deception, and it's a two-seam fastball, so it works well down in the zone with a little bit of sink action, and when you throw it up in the zone, it looks like it's rising. So it's a very, very powerful fastball. And although some scouts think it might end up having to regress a little bit just based on developing other pitches during his time going and working on, for example, the changeup and curveball to get a little bit better, I think it's something that will end up being a valuable tool for him to use in the long run. He's also developing a new cutter to give him some horizontal action because right now all of his pitches are either the fastball or just 12 to 6 action, so that should grade out to be about an average pitch. It's not going to be anything to jump off the table at, but at the end of the day, having a pitch like that is going to be incredibly beneficial. In today's day and age, you see a lot of pitchers have maybe a 3-pitch mix of a fastball or a sinker mixed with a changeup or a cutter and slider, so there's a lot of variability there, but right now, if he can get a pitch that has more horizontal break, he's going to be in a really good spot there. He's likely going to be a back-end starter. His ceiling isn't super high, but his floor also isn't super low. At the very least, he's going to project to be a middle relief lefty, so you're not going to count on him in a safe situation, kind of similar to Madden if he became a reliever. But he's going to be someone that when you see trot out, you know you're not going to go ahead and get a 5-spot blown up on you like you do with some relievers. Granted, that's just the nature of being a relief pitcher in Major League Baseball. It's going to happen sometimes, but he's not going to be someone that when you go on Twitter and you search up Colorado Rockies relief pitcher, Rockies fans are screaming, "We hate Mason Albright." That's not who he is. He's also a ground ball pitcher. The Rockies did their research. You do not want to have someone who gives up a lot of fly balls in Coors Field. So he should play well in Colorado when he gets there, and it's someone that the Rockies fans should be looking forward to as they go and progress up the minor leagues, and hopefully by the end of this year or beginning of next, reaches AA, which would be really impressive because he would be very young for the class. If you like trade videos like this, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button either in the bottom right corner or the top right corner of the video, and it'll take you to subscribe to the page. It really means a lot to have a channel like this grow. I love baseball, I love talking trades, and having a channel to be able to express that and analyze prospects is something I love, and hopefully you're enjoying it as well. Without further ado, here are the grades for the Angels and the Rockies in the CJ Cron Randal Grichuk trade. For the Angels, I think this trade is an easy A. They have an absolute desperate need at first base right now. If you look at where they are in terms of their depth at first base, they have Jake Walsh, who was expected to be a really solid first baseman for them for a while. He ended up really falling off a cliff and recently got DFA'd. I also mentioned that you have Trey Cabbage, and I really like Trey Cabbage as a prospect, but at the end of the day, he's probably not going to be a guy you're going to want to start every day at first base. So they really did need a first baseman if they're going to go ahead and try and contend for either the AL West crown or the wild card or the World Series, which at the end of this year is what the goal is. You don't have a Shohei Ohtani experience if you don't have a World Series, so they need to go all in. I also think Randal Grichuk is a good pickup, especially for the short term. He's going to go ahead and aid your outfield of Moniak, Renfroe, and now you're going to have Randal Grichuk out there. That's a solid outfield. It's nothing to go ahead and write home about and say, wow, look at this outfield that I have. But once Mike Trout comes back, once Joe Adell comes back, you're going to have a very, very potent outfield right there. And although Taylor Ward is most likely out for the season now, it's something that you can go ahead, look at the outfield, and say Trout, Adell, Moniak, Renfroe, Grichuk. That is an outfield that could potentially win a World Series, and that's what they needed. They needed someone to go ahead and offset the injuries that have plagued the team throughout the year. And Grichuk isn't going to match the production that a good Taylor Ward will have or a elite Mike Trout because he's Mike Trout, but he will do enough that he could potentially propel the team to make the playoffs this year. The Rockies will also get an A grade for this trade. I think looking at where they are and you look at their minor league system, the Angels had a ton of pitching depth. The Rockies had almost no pitching depth. If you look at MLB Pipeline's top prospects for them, for example, there's not a pitcher in the top 5. I believe their first pitcher is ranked number 8. I don't have it pulled up in front of me or that note in front of me, so please don't quote me on that. But they do have a big drop off before they get to their first pitcher. Being able to acquire Jake Madden, who is someone who has a very high ceiling and could be a very, very good pitcher in Coors Field, which is important. If you can get someone who isn't going to give up a lot of home runs, isn't going to give up a lot of power to opposing hitters, you're going to minimize damage done in Coors Field. And for Rockies fans, this is someone that if he makes it, you're going to be excited about, and you're going to be talking about him like Ubaldo Jimenez, like Kyle Freeland when he first came up. He's going to be really good. Now, there's obviously the chance that he doesn't meet that potential, but if he does, this is going to be really, really good for Rockies fans. I also like Mason Albright. He's not someone who's going to, again, jump out the page at you, but he's someone who has a lot of potential. And although it's not as high of a ceiling as someone like Jake Madden, if they both make it, it's going to be a very, very, very good starting rotation. And maybe that first week of the season, you have Jake Madden in the 2, Mason Albright in the 3 in 2026. That's absolutely going to be scary if they both reach their full potential for that. And if they don't, you have 2 decent enough bullpen RMs who will go ahead and contribute to your team and be successful and maybe at some point bring you back another return. Rockies fans don't want to rebuild. I know they want to win. I know they haven't won in a while. But this is a good step in the right direction, and the floor isn't impossibly low, especially for a rental. So they got 2 solid pieces back. I'm happy with it. This is the first trade I think both teams made out equally. I think the Angels overpaid for someone like Lucas Giolito earlier this trade deadline. This is a fair trade, and I think makes a lot of people happy. So thanks again for watching. Expect more of these to come out as the trade deadline ends. And if you really like this video, please give it a like, please comment down below, and make sure to subscribe. It really means a lot to a channel to grow and to just interact. Baseball is a passion of mine and hopefully a passion of yours. And I'm glad I got to share a little bit of my analysis of this Rockies-Angels trade at the 2023 trade deadline with you.